from the BBC World Service in association with ABC and All India Radio. This is Stumped.
Hello and welcome to Stumped, your intercontinental hit of news, features and debate from the quirky world of cricket. I'm Alison Mitchell in the BBC commentary box at Lord's, the home of cricket, with all the anticipation of a day of men's test cricket ahead. I can see the England flag and India flags just fluttering above the balconies of the two dressing rooms in the famous terracotta pavilion across the way, and the outfield is green. It's looking quite lush. There's been a fair amount of rain of late, but hopefully the weather is going to be set fair. And yes, those stripes up and down the lawn. The lawn is quite a big lawn. It's absolutely looking immaculate, and it's the first test here since crowd restrictions were lifted, so there really was quite a buzz of people coming through the gates this morning.
Yes, Ali, it's Jim Maxwell for the ABC here in Sydney. Not fluttering, but flittering in lockdown, and hoping for some cricket tonight. I hope the weather's going to hold up, because there's not much else going on when you're in your cave, and you've got to look out for things to do. So the test cricket from the UK is very, very important, particularly as we've got such an interesting series going on, if it doesn't rain again.
Well, Jim, we're not going to talk about Australia and the T20s, are we? Maybe a little later in the program. But hello, this is Charu Sharma from Bangalore for All India Radio. And Indian cricket fans will certainly claim a moral victory at the end of that first test match. Thanks to the weather, of course, play was abandoned. And Alison, you mentioned rain, which is not a very good word these days. But I can only imagine the atmosphere at Lord's later this weekend will be fantastic. And of course, the appetite has been whetted. There's been lots of talk about team changes. And I think there will be enormous interest in the Lord's Test, especially because the curtain now has been closed on the Tokyo Olympics. So all attention back on cricket.
Yeah, and so it was a change of pace for me because I've been following the 100 tournament up and down the country. But are you missing the Olympics, both of you? Jim, I mean, when Al Nicholson was on for you the other week, we briefly compared notes on the number of gold medals that our respective countries had in the medal table. So I just wanted to note how things ended up, because with the Olympics at an end, Great Britain, 22 golds, 65 medals in all, in fourth place. Australia, just 17 golds and 46 in all. It's a shame.
Was the most gold medals Australia's ever won. And I think more significant for Charu was the fellow with the javelin won a gold medal.
It's made huge headlines here in India, and everybody's sort of excited about sport once again. It was India's highest ever medal tally at the Olympics with 7, so not much. No bragging rights there. But still, you know, all things considered, I mean, there are lots of permutations and combinations about per capita and per income and this, that, and the other. We'll take that one gold and the rest of the 6 medals along with it. You know, it was a happy Olympics eventually.
Well, look, if we fast forward 7 years and the Olympics in LA in 2028, it could be that one of those gold medals is for cricket. Well, 2 of those medals, men's and women's, could be for cricket, because the ICC has confirmed that they're planning to bid for the sport to be part of the Games in 2028 and beyond. Now, the sport will feature at next year's Commonwealth Games in Birmingham, making a comeback in that multi-sport event. And cricket has been part of the Olympics before. That was at the start of the 20th century, the year 1900 in France. England and France were the only nations to actually take part. They played a one-off match. Actually wasn't given Olympic status even into some time afterwards. A bit of a curiosity. But what of cricket in the Olympics? Well, England captain Joe Root has backed the idea.
It'd be great for the game. You know, we're always talking about how can we grow the game, how can we get it out there, and I think the Olympics would be a great opportunity to do that. So, you know, it'd be great to see maybe even a 100 format in that. Who knows? But it would be fantastic to see cricketers in the Olympics.
Well, the ICC has set up a working group to take this bid forward, and chair of that group is Ian Watmore, who's also chair of the England and Wales Cricket Board. Ian, welcome to Stumped.
Thank you very much. Welcome. I'm very pleased to be here.
Yeah, it's great to have you. Just tell us then how this has come about from the ICC's perspective.
Okay, well, speaking personally, I mean, I've been in this role for just under a year, but I've been many years thought cricket should be in the Olympics. So when I joined the ICC board, and it was an early topic of discussion, I was a big enthusiast right from the beginning. And I think I'm pleased to say that all of the board members were right behind it. So we decided, let's press on, go for it. LA is the first opportunity we have. And now that we've got Brisbane confirmed immediately behind as the next venue, then that gives us a real platform to try and get cricket on the Olympics. So we're pressing all steam ahead.
Do you know why it's taken so long, in a sense? Because I remember being at the Beijing Games in 2008, and the then ICC President David Morgan visited the Olympics, and it was all about having 2020 cricket in the year 2020, but that never happened. So what has shifted?
I don't know what all the history is, and I haven't really delved behind that, but I think it's been important, for example, that England and India have backed this particularly. I think there have been some comments in the past that those two countries have been less enthusiastic. But, you know, I can speak for England Cricket Board. We had a full discussion on it, and we think it'd be fabulous for the game, not just here, but the whole around the world. But also Saurav and Jay and the Indian BCCI board feel the same. And I know the other countries, Australia, etc., have always been enthusiastic. So I think we've got the stars are in alignment. We can go for it.
So do you know what changed from the Indian perspective? Obviously, you're a personal fan of it. Is it simply that there's been a change of personnel with a different attitude?
Well, again, I don't really know the history, but what I can say is that the current leadership of the BCCI that I work with is very enthusiastic about growing the game worldwide. Obviously, India is dominant in terms of world cricket, in terms of its fan base and its commercial power and all the rest of it, and it has fabulous players and teams. But I think the people of India and the leaders of Indian cricket really want to grow the game globally, and they see this as a huge part of ways to achieve that.
Jim Maxwell here in Sydney. I know historically Charu hinted that the 100 might be a format, but would that work? Because I thought it had to be some international form of the game. You would have thought T20 is the obvious form of the game if you're going to have cricket at the Olympics.
Yeah, well, I think we've taken the view that we'll start by looking at T20 for the reasons you said, Jim, because the Olympics will require a global format of the game. And sitting here today, the one that's obviously played everywhere in cricket is 2020. So that's what we'll start with. But the good thing about our game is we have multiple formats to choose from. And as we discuss with the Olympics, how and whether, you know, let's assume that they agree in principle to us going on, then the how we do it, it gives us real options for choice from T20, the 100, even T10. So there's lots of options out there, but start with T20.
Well, hello, Ian. This is Charu Sharma on behalf of All India Radio. Thanks so much for joining us. May I begin by asking that it's one thing for the cricket fraternity, and of course you're leading it on behalf of the ICC, to request for inclusion in the Olympics, but it's also possible that there are many sports who have been lobbying for a space in the Olympics for very long, and the Olympics themselves are trying not to get bigger, but perhaps more lean. So what is your feeling about cricket actually making the grade?
Well, I'm glad you asked me that, because it's really important that whilst I think it's now become a common view across cricket that the Olympics will be great for cricket, we have to convince the Olympics will be great for them. And so we have to start with that mindset. I think the critical thing that we can bring to the Olympics is, you know, over 1 billion fans who love our game around the world, and particularly in places in the world where maybe the Olympics is looking to grow its depth, as we were talking earlier, with the excitement of your javelin winner, for example. Then you know, can you imagine how excited it would be if the equivalent of Kohli, or in the past Dhoni, or somebody like that was up there holding aloft a gold medal? I mean, your country would go completely nuts, and rightly so. So I think we have to convince the Olympics that we are good for them, but I think we have a very good case to do that with.
Now, having mentioned the 100 as a format, we can't escape your role as chair of the ECB and the brand new tournament that's been launched across the summer here in England and Wales. How do you feel it's been going? Do you believe specifically, is the tournament achieving its stated aim of bringing that new audience to the game?
Well, it's obviously early days and we haven't even finished the first running of the tournament yet, but all the evidence we have is precisely what you just said. It is hitting the mark, and particularly new audiences. One of the great things about the 100 has been men and women in the double headers at each of the venues, and we've been getting huge crowds for the women's game as well as the men's games, which means that the women's game is on a completely new trajectory just as a result of the last few weeks. And the Olympics, another great thing about the Olympics it will be men's and women's, and I think that's really important. We've had the Indian women have been over this summer. I mean, I came out to Ahmedabad in February, and we planned that tour then, including a test amongst the women. But we've had fantastic support from the women playing in the 100 as well, so that's been great. So all of that is broadening the appeal of the game here in England and around the world. And hopefully when we do the full competition review, the data will really back that up. But so far, I mean, not just so good, I think it's gone beyond where we thought it would.
Are you worried at the positioning of the 100 versus red ball cricket? And at the moment, so we've got a test series on, but when players are hit by injuries, we've got players coming in that have played no red ball cricket yet this season even, or if they're dropped from the test team, they've only got the 100 to go to. Where do they find their form again? How much of a concern is that? And does that need to be addressed as far as you're concerned?
Yeah, I think you're at Lord's, are you, Alison? I'm about half an hour away, and I'll be seeing you there in a while. I'm really looking forward to this test. It's going to be really exciting. I think we do have to look at the schedule across the board, because I think we have now got new tournaments like the 100. The IPL is obviously, it's not an England and Wales tournament, but it affects us because it's played in April and May, and we have some of our best players playing in it. So we have to look at the whole schedule, including when these global events happen, as Jim was talking about earlier. We've got the Commonwealth Games next year in Birmingham to think about. Occasionally, World Cups and hosted in our time frame. We've got the Olympics hopefully coming in. So yes, we need to look at the schedule across the board. And for me, I'm a red ball fan, so I'm going to, obviously bias my sort of personal views towards that. But I think it's really important we think of the red ball game as an integrated whole, test and county championship, and we schedule it accordingly. To maximise the success of the championship, but also to maximise the success of England in a given season and over the long term.
Ian, thank you so much for joining us on Stumped, and we wish you well and look forward to keeping updated on the progress of the Olympic bid with the ICC, and also look forward to seeing you at Lord's later on, I hope.
Thank you. Cheers. That
is Ian Watmore, Chair of the ICC's Olympic Working Group and Chair of the England and Wales Cricket Board as well. Jim, Charu, I think there we got both a sense of, why cricket would be good for the Olympics, as well as why the Olympics, could be good for cricket.
I think it's a logistical nightmare. July and August is when you have the Olympic Games on. Well, you can't work the English season now with the 100. I mean, it's an absolute logjam, cannibalistic performance from the schedulers to try and pull it all together. It's just a joke. So you're going to have a World Cup and the Olympics in the same year? Well, I don't know how they can do it. That's all I'm saying.
Well, I think Ian was referring to the fact that the IOC may be pushed to accepting cricket because of its large base, even though that base is really, in terms of population, just a couple of countries. But yeah, there are several problems. And what's going to happen about the West Indies? Because the West Indies, we know, are only nations in the Olympics. So what, are they going to be separated into 8 teams and all 8 will vie for an Olympic spot or what? So there are complications. Let's not get ahead of ourselves.
From the BBC World Service, this is Stumped on All India Radio.
Well, I mentioned about Lord's looking now over the outfield and some players warming up. There's a few spots of rain, though, and the covers have been brought across. Hopefully that's only temporary. But yes, the second test between India and England is staged here. No Stuart Broad, though. He's missing what would have been his 150th test. He's out for the series with injury. And you think of England, you think of Broad and Anderson. There's an injury cloud over Anderson as well as a pairing. They've played 312 tests together and taken over 1,000 wickets. Charu, it's just always a miss. And we're seeing more injuries amongst bowlers in particular at the moment, given this schedule.
Well, the fast bowler is almost always on the injury list. It's very difficult to keep them going at 100%. But I'll tell you what, if the Indians thought they had a psychological edge, or if they want to claim victory, moral ground, at the end of the first test, with no Stuart Broad, also no Ben Stokes, no Wokes, no Archer, England are suffering. And yet, of course, they did reasonably well because they're playing in home conditions. So, yeah, I think the Indians almost immediately are favoured here at the Lord's Test, even though batting-wise they really haven't done very much. But they will already be psychologically thinking of advantage India at Lord's.
But Jim, Charu mentioned it at the top of the show. Australia's prep for the Men's T20 World Cup has not been going too well, has it? An unwanted record, shall we say, on the way to their 4-1 series loss to Bangladesh?
There's been a few articles in the press here about how the tour to the West Indies and Bangladesh was a total waste of time. And I tend to agree with that to an extent because, on the one hand, we had players unavailable who were clearly number one in those batting positions. And on the other, it was said, oh, well, it'll give other people a chance to put some pressure on the existing players for the T20 later in the year. Well, it's all unravelled a bit. We had the joke of Dan Christian and Matthew Wade opening the other day, combined ages of 71, which I think for those who are statistically minded is probably the first time in a T20 match that the age of the opening batsman was more than the team made in their innings, 62. It's not good. All I can say is I'm taking no notice of it. I'll wait until the fellas who can bat play again, and then I will take a little bit more notice. But good luck to Bangladesh. And what about this other nonsense of the fella from Cricket Australia who follows and gives reports on the tours, putting the Bangladesh song into one of his reports and being reprimanded by the coach and the manager of the Australian team for it? I mean, how narrow-minded is that? Seriously.
Well, that's all we've got time for on this week's Stumped here on All India Radio. So my thanks to Charu Sharma, Jim Maxwell, and to you all for listening. Don't forget you can keep in touch with the show throughout the week. We're at BBCWS Sports and use the hashtag BBC Stumped. In the meantime, stay safe. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Stumped is a BBC sport production for the BBC World Service in association with the Australian Broadcasting Corporation and All India Radio.